Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Hélio Gomes. I'm a managing director at Runtime Revolution. I'm here to talk with you about MVPs and how we at Runtime Revolution build these MVPs for the startups in a fast way and in a cost-effective way. Runtime Revolution is a company that was founded in 2006. It started with the idea of building applications fast to deliver fast and test concepts. So this was a gap in the market that the founders has identified at that time, and that was the main goal to found this company. And it's a very good mindset for the startups because it's exactly what the startups need, is to build something fast, to test, to learn, to have some results and see what works and what doesn't work. Okay? And nowadays, we are around 140 people, and we have presence in Portugal and the United States. So we focus mainly on the United States, but we also have some clients in Europe. And our focus is also on the startups, but we also work with enterprise clients. Okay? This mindset of building fast applications, and in 2006, to have some quick results and then show results in a. With the time, we are following the technology's evolution, and today we use not just Ruby on Rails, and we use cloud services that can help us, services like Shopify and something like that, that allow us to create these MVPs in a fast way. Okay, but we are still using Ruby on Rails, but we are using other technologies also. Our motto is from Lisbon to everywhere. Okay, and this was from the beginning because our operational team was always in Portugal, in Lisbon. Now we are all around the country, all around Portugal, but in the beginning we started in Lisbon. And we always wanted to work in projects all around the world. So not just in Portugal. That was always the main goal. Okay? And the idea of this session is for me to present you what is the MVP process that we perform at Runtime Revolution. Okay? So you may think, okay, this is another session of building MVPs. You probably saw a lot of them. What I'm going to show is the process and the framework that we use at Runtime. And we have plenty of experience doing it. We do it for several years. It's not anything new, okay? You can see lots of documentation that is similar to this, but we adapt it to our reality and with our experience. And we have been evolutioning this framework. Okay? This process is based on iterations. Okay? So what you see here is what are the phases of an iteration. And for a startup, when wants to build an MVP, it's very important to have several iterations because each iteration will deliver something that needs to be tested and see if it works or doesn't work before we go for the next iteration. Okay? And these phases allow us to think about the specific iteration, and then when we test, we will then see what to do in the next iteration. These are the 4 phases of one specific iteration, and the first one is the discover phase. This phase is very important because it's where we see with the startup what is the main idea that they want to implement, what are the goals that they have, and they can have different roles, get traction, collect data in the beginning. Okay? It's important for us to understand what are the time frames that they want, the competition that they have currently, because we like to do a consulting service with them, and we help them thinking about their idea and what's the best way to implement it, based on our experience, of course. For us, we also try to understand the business domain where they play, and work together with them to understand what's the best way to start working with the iterations of the MVP. It's also important to know the budget. We usually ask the budget from the startup. And it's important for what? For us also to advise somehow what's the best way to use that money. Once again, based on our experience, because sometimes the startups think on using all the money, for instance, in the technical part, but it's also important for them to have some money for marketing and for sales. It always depends on the context of the startup, but it's something that we also advise on this specific discover phase. Okay? After we have that information, we start planning the iteration, and we pass to the concept phase. This concept phase is where we start designing what would be delivered in this first iteration. Okay? In the next slide, I will show you in more particular some steps that we use in each of these phases. But the idea of the concept is to have a design, okay, what do we want to execute and deliver in this iteration? Then the execution is where we will put the concept in place. And this usually can have two parts. Okay? Can be just on the design side, and can also include the implementation and the development if we want to go and create some working application with some code behind. And after we deliver that, we pass it to a test phase. And that test phase is very important because it's the phase where we'll see what is the result of this iteration. And the result of this iteration will also influence the next iteration, what to do in the next iteration. Okay? Going into more details about each of these phases. So these are some of the steps that we use in each of the phases. So starting on the discover, the briefing is the first step. And the briefing is mainly discussions with the startup to what I said before, to understand what they want to do, what is the idea, what is the business domain, what is the budget, what is the expected goal for this specific period. Then we can do some competition analysis and user research. Okay? By the way, this is our complete framework. But if you ask me, okay, do you usually use all of these steps in all the MVPs? No. Okay. Most of the MVPs, we don't use all the steps. We adapt to each case, each context. Sometimes the startup already has some of these steps. They made the homework themselves. But we are prepared to work to help them on each of these. Okay. So after at the discover phase, we do these 3 steps. Then we go to the concept, and in the concept is, like I told before, is where we start designing the solution for this specific iteration. And there we usually work with use cases, flowcharts, can have sessions with card sorting, and define a sitemap in case of a web application. Okay? And with this, it's always doing together with the startup and the people, the team from the startup. We and them start seeing, okay, this is what we want to do in this specific iteration. Then when we go to the execute phase, we have several steps. Like I told you, we can work first on the design, and we can go through different steps. We can start by wireframing, where we are just defining the architecture of the information in the web application, where we put each information with some placeholders, where the startup can start seeing their idea putting in place. And then we can pass to the visual design. With the visual design, we can have low fidelity or high fidelity designs where people can start seeing exactly, okay, this is what is going to appear as a final solution. And then the prototyping. The prototyping is very important and can be very important, and I will explain you some examples next to show you some cases where there was important. Because the prototyping is something that we can do using tools like Figma, for instance, where we can not just have the screens, but also iterations between the screens. So we can define flows, user flows, to where the user can click on this prototype and see the application moving forward and back. And it's great without any code, so we don't have any code at this point, to start seeing, okay, this will be the user experience of the users, okay? And then we can then pass to the development, so with the developer team together with the design team and the consulting team that also participated in the beginning. Then the test phase, we are dividing here in design review and user testing. So after we have developed something, we want to put on the tests of the users and see what are the results, what is the feedback. It's very important to collect feedback and the continuous measuring the results. And this completes an iteration, and the idea is to go to the next iteration based on the conclusions that we had in the previous one. Okay? And it's very important for the MVPs, and even not on MVPs, on our product development, to work on these iterations and always learning, always get conclusions, what works best, what works worse. And the next iteration we will brief again and see, okay, what are we going to do next based on the results that we had before. Okay? So this is mainly our process. As I told you, not all the steps are always used, but it's the framework that we have and that we have been used for these last years with the startups. What I'm going to do now is to explain you some examples, different examples of real cases that we had with real startups and companies that had different goals, different starting points, and had also different outcomes, just for you to see how we can use this process in different contexts, okay? So this is the first case. This was an agriculture startup, okay? And in this case, I want to show you an example of quick prototyping and success funding. And this was a startup, was a Portuguese startup that came into us, and they wanted to develop a B2B market solution to bring together farmers and industrial buyers. And what their goal was, in 3 weeks, they wanted to have something to show to investors because they wanted to participate in Web Summit. And of course, in 3 weeks is a very limited time range. And we told them, okay, we can discuss what we can do, but there won't be any developments. There is no time to make some developments and have something running. So what we did is we mainly created a prototype, like I told you before. So we worked on the design of the, well, we defined the use cases together with them, what is important for you to show on your pitches, what are the user flows, what are the screens that you need, okay? And we worked together with them very closely. And in those 3 weeks, we had a prototype where they could show to the investors user flows working with the static content, but using a specific prototype for that. And the result was a success because they showed it to investors and they got investment, not only in Web Summit, but other investments. And we continue working with them, then, okay, already starting developing some stuff. And it was a success because This was a very specific case where there was no time, and they wanted to show something quick. So this was an example of a quick delivery, not with codes, but with something working that can add value to show to the investors. Second case, this was an healthcare startup in UK. The founder had a personal health issue that, using the conventional medicine was not working so well. So she started looking for other alternatives that worked well in her case. And so she wanted to create a platform, to build a platform to give the users a well-being plan based on a DNA test that the users could do, and with some medical assistance online. And based on that, medical team that she wanted to have would create a well-being plan specific for each individual. And in this case, it's a case where there was a short budget and a large scope. And this is why, because she had the ideas well formed in her head, and it was a large scope. So she wanted to create a platform to provide the users that plan, but also the online medical assistance, practitioners, e-commerce for some natural products that she wanted to sell, to schedule some venues and practitioners to work with them, because we are talking about services like messages, yoga sessions, something like that. And she also only had £50,000 for the MVP, what was very short for everything that she wanted to do. And we also advised her, okay, the best way to do this is to select, okay, what is more important for you to test in the first phase, and not to spend so much money before you test and see if this works. And this was a case where we did a great consulting services with her we defined the scope together, with her, for using this budget, this specific budget. And it worked very well because we created an MVP, and she got the investment for future developments, and we continue working with them for around 2 years, I believe. And this was a case where, looking at our process, the MVP process, we worked in almost all the steps, at least in the first iterations, okay? Because it's natural that in the first iterations we use more steps, in the following iterations we don't use all the steps. Okay? But this was a great example where we worked on almost all our framework, and we helped this startup to define the specific scope for the budget that she had. Okay. Another example, it's a fintech startup. So this was also a successful startup, but with a different outcome in this case, for Runtime. Okay? So this was an American fintech that wanted to build an alternative investment marketplace for private equity funds management. And it started with a team of 3 people on their side, and with $500,000 in budget for the MVP. And we started working with them on the MVP. We did not apply all the framework because they already did some work on their sides. But we worked mainly on the development and also on some advisory on what to do on each iteration. And we've made several iterations with them. What makes this case special is that they had huge investments. Okay, they had big investors like the BlackRock, Deutsche Bank, and they started to grow in a huge velocity. And also our team started to grow because we continued to be their technical team during that period. And we became to have a team, a big team specialized in fintech working for them. And there was a point in the time that they wanted to buy our team. Okay? So this was the unique case that we had, that there was a spin-off of the Runtime team, and that was acquired by this fintech. And today they are a company, a very big company that is all has around 1,200 people, with 13 offices all around the world. They are operating also in Portugal. So this was a great success, and this is why we are, the title of this case is From MVP to Billions, and with a huge growth on this specific case. The next case is a different example, okay? A different case. Because this was not exactly a startup, so this is a company that is already operating on the rental services, and they have a set of buildings that are distributed and managed in a distributed way, with different companies making the management of each building. And the goal here was to have some software to manage the operation of the management of the buildings. And cases like the building's configuration, the contracts management, the invoicing, the cash flow, were needs that they had for their operation. And they also had some short budgets, and after we had the discover sessions in our process, we found that the best we could have a solution using no-code tools, because they didn't have users outside the organization, just their clients that could use some forms that are offered out of the box with some tools. And we mainly used no-code, started with no-code solutions in the first iterations, and we keep having iterations with them. In this case, we used Airtable, mainly Airtable with the job forms for the forms. And the Airtable is a great tool because it allows us to create some databases, because they have some relational tables, and some interfaces and automations that allow us to create a very good solution using no code, okay, just almost by configuration. And this was great because we could deliver a solution where the operation could work with absolutely no code, and they could create the invoices. Also, we worked on the integration with the banking account, with the invoicing system, with almost no code. Then on the next iterations, we started using some low-code solutions, and we have now a roadmap where we think on doing something more complex. But with this solution, all the operation is working, and in 2-3 weeks, I believe, there was already a solution in place. Okay? So this is also to show you a different case where the context and the goal of the startups is not always the same, and what we do with them is to have some consulting phase with them to understand what do you need, what is the fastest way and the best way to give you some results. And in this case, a no-code solution was absolutely possible, and very short budget was needed, and the results were exactly what they wanted. Okay. And this is the last case that I wanted to show you. So it had a different outcome, but it's also important to show you an example where a startup also came to us. This is from Dubai. And they wanted to, they had an idea of creating a food delivery system. And the ideas were to famous chefs to cook and deliver meals to the users of the platform. But it was just an idea, needed to be tested, and they didn't have much money for that. So, okay, let's create a very simple web application. In this case, he wanted to test it in a very limited set of users, some friends of them, also with some chefs that he already have spoken to. Okay, it's important is to prove the concept. Let's create just a very simple application where the users can set the requests, send the requests to the backend, and let's see how it works. And that was exactly what we did, to create a very simple application to spend the less money as possible, to have the less costs for this user or for this specific startup. And the result was that the concept didn't work. So it was more a logistics problem. And the conclusion was that the concept was not going to work. What is the result of this? It didn't spend much money to have that conclusion, okay? We could start, okay, developing a very complex application, already thinking on, okay, to have a complete application, and he would spend much, much more money. So after we have talked with him, we decided together to do this approach, and it was great, and he was very, well, he was not happy, of course, but he liked to work in our approach. And some time ago, several months, I don't know if years, he came back to us because his mother was also an entrepreneur in the beauty salons in Dubai. And she wanted to work on the application for their salons. And he came back to us after that time because he liked to work with us, the approach, the way that we worked with him, and we are still working with him nowadays, okay? So we are working for, I believe, 2 or 3 years with these clients, okay? So these are the cases that I wanted to present you. I think it's important to have some practical cases and not just the theory. And all of these cases used our framework with several iterations using most of those steps, not all the steps that I showed to you, and with different results. And this is the way that we like to work with the startups, to work together with them in partnership, helping them to make the best solutions based on their context, on their goals, and also on their budget. Okay? And that's all. I don't know.